She said, I slept with my ex, but it was only 10 seconds. So I left the ring on the table and walked away like she never existed. My name is Logan. I'm 31 years old. And up until a few months ago, I was engaged to the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. Lily and I had been living together for almost 2 years in a small but comfortable apartment in Portland. It wasn't fancy or big, but it felt like home because it was filled with our memories. Late-night talks on the balcony, messy dinners where we'd burn the garlic bread, lazy Sundays watching movies with her head on my chest. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. We got engaged last fall. I bought the ring after months of saving. It wasn't huge, but I knew it was the one she would love. When I slipped it on her finger that evening, she smiled like she meant it. I thought we were building a life together. I thought we were safe. I was wrong. That night started like any other. I got home around 6, dropped my bag on the couch, and started making dinner. Just something simple, pasta and garlic bread, the kind of meal we'd shared 100 times before. She had texted me earlier to say she'd be late. Something about catching up with an old friend from college. I didn't think much of it at the time. There was no suspicion, no doubt, just trust. That's what I believed in. Trusting the person you love, even when you don't have all the details. I thought that was a sign of a strong relationship. I believed in her. I believed in us. It was a little after 9 when she walked in. Quietly, almost too quietly. She set her keys down gently on the counter and poured herself a glass of water without looking at me. Her face looked off. Not sad. Not angry. Just distant. Like her mind was still somewhere else. I asked if she was okay, and she gave me a small smile and said, just a long day. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. But at the time, I thought giving her space was the right thing to do. So we sat down to eat, and I told her about my day. Some silly story about a client at work. She smiled at the right parts, nodded along, but I could tell she wasn't really there with me. Something was off, I just couldn't place it yet. Halfway through dinner, she put down her fork and said softly, "Can we talk after this?" My heart skipped. I don't know why, but I instantly felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "About what?" She just shook her head and said, "Something I've been meaning to tell you." We finished the meal in silence. My appetite was gone, but I forced the food down, pretending everything was fine, pretending I wasn't already playing every worst-case scenario in my mind. After dinner, we moved to the couch. She sat on the edge, her hands clenched together so tight her knuckles were white. I sat across from her, trying to stay calm, but I could feel the pressure building in my chest. And then she spoke, slowly, carefully, like each word was a heavy stone she was trying to set down without breaking the floor beneath us. She said, "You probably remember Chris. I've mentioned him a few times." I nodded. I barely knew anything about him except that he was her ex from college. Someone she'd dated briefly before me. Someone I didn't think mattered anymore. She continued, "He messaged me a few days ago, said he wanted to catch up. Just lunch." I thought it was harmless. I felt something inside me tighten, but I didn't say anything. She went on, "We met today. That's why I was late. We talked and turned into more time than I planned. After lunch, he invited me to his apartment." My stomach dropped. I could feel my breathing change, my mind trying to stay ahead of what she was about to say. I asked quietly, "Why did you go?" She looked down at her hands and said, "I don't know. I guess I needed to see if there were any feelings left before we got married." I thought I owed it to myself. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. She couldn't look at me. The room felt heavier with every second. And then I asked, "What happened?" She took a deep breath and whispered, "We talked for a while. Then he asked if I wanted to go upstairs. I should have said no, but I didn't. I went up, and we slept together." I felt like everything inside me shattered at once. I didn't react. Couldn't. My body was still, but my mind was screaming. I asked, "You slept with him?" She nodded, her voice barely audible. "It was a mistake, Logan. I didn't mean for it to happen. It wasn't planned. I don't know what happened. I swallowed hard and asked again. Did you actually have sex with him? Or are you just saying it got close? There was a long silence. And then she said, we did, but I stopped it. After 10 seconds, I pulled away. I couldn't go through with it. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. 10 seconds? You think that makes it better? She reached out toward me, her eyes filling with tears. Please, Logan. I know I messed up, but I thought of you. I realized I loved you, and that's why I came back. I pulled my hand away. You thought of me after you took your clothes off? After you were already in his bed? She was crying now, hands shaking, voice breaking as she said, I love you, Logan. I know it doesn't make sense. I know I hurt you, but I came back. Doesn't that mean something? I stood up and walked toward the window, needing space just to breathe. No, I said. It doesn't mean anything. Love doesn't work like that. You don't prove commitment by testing it with someone else. You don't sleep with your ex just to see if you're ready to marry me. She walked toward me slowly, her voice soft. Please don't let this ruin us. It was a stupid, one-time mistake. We can get through it. We can go to therapy. We can rebuild. I turned around, my voice cold now. You didn't just make a mistake, Lily. You made a choice. You went to lunch with him. You went to his place. You took that step. And then you slept with him. That's not an accident. That's not a slip. That's a betrayal. She tried again, her voice barely a whisper now. I just didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. I shook my head. But you weren't scared when you went over there. You weren't scared when you took that step. You were only scared when you realized what you had to lose. I picked up my jacket from the chair, walked to the kitchen counter, took off the ring from my finger, the one I'd spent months saving for, and set it down gently on the table. You're not the person I thought I was marrying, I said. You're just a stranger who looks like her. She cried harder then, reached for me one last time. Logan, please, don't leave me, please. But I didn't say another word. I walked out of that apartment and didn't look back. I didn't go back the next day, not the week after. In fact, I never went back at all. She tried to reach out, texted me, called me, even had her sister leave a voicemail saying Lily was falling apart. But I stayed silent. Not because I hated her, but because I knew there was nothing left to save. Trust, once shattered, doesn't come back in the same shape. It turns into something fragile, always cracking under pressure. I moved into a smaller place on the edge of town. Quiet, lonely sometimes, sure, but honest. There was no pretending in these walls. No secrets. Just the sound of me trying to rebuild a life that she had broken in 10 seconds. People say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal, it teaches. Teaches you what to never ignore again. A few months later, she sent me a letter. Handwritten. Said she regretted everything. Said if she could take it back, she would. Said she should have blocked Chris when he messaged. Should have talked to me instead. Should have protected what we had. She said she still loved me, that she'd never stop. But as I read her words, I didn't feel pain. I felt peace, because I finally understood that her love was conditional. It only spoke loudly when she was afraid of losing something. And I deserved more than that. I deserved someone who chose me every day, not someone who needed to lose me just to recognize my worth. That letter went into a drawer, never replied to. Because the closure I needed didn't come from her words. Came from the silence that followed. Now, I wake up each day in a home that's small, but filled with clarity. I work hard. I spend time with friends who remind me what real connection feels like, and I'm slowly learning to trust again. This time, more carefully. I'm not bitter. I'm just wiser. Lily will always be a chapter in my story, but she's no longer the ending. The real ending came when I realized I didn't need to scream or argue or prove anything. I just needed to walk away, with dignity, with strength, and with the ring left on the table as a final goodbye. If you've ever been betrayed, just know this. The most powerful thing you can do is leave quietly and live loudly. Thank you for watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more real stories that hit deep.